Welcome back to Women of Worth, the podcast that's all about breaking free from limits and living your most authentic life. Today, we're diving into a topic that so many of us struggle with: the fear of judgment. How often do we hold back from saying what we really mean, dressing how we want, or following our dreams, all because we're afraid of what others might think? But here's the truth: living unapologetically isn't just freeing, it's necessary for true self-acceptance and happiness. In this episode, we'll explore why the fear of judgment runs so deep, how it holds us back, and what steps we can take to silence those inner critics and external pressures. We'll look at real solutions, from shifting our mindset to responding gracefully to judgmental people. By the end, you'll feel ready to embrace who you truly are, without apology. If this sounds like the journey you're ready for, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an empowering episode. And we want to hear from you. Comment below with any topics you'd love us to explore in the future. Together, we're building a community that supports each other's growth, confidence, and freedom to be ourselves. Now, let's get started and dive into how we can finally let go of the fear of judgment and live life on our own terms.
You know, that fear of being judged? It's like pretty much everyone feels that, right? But for women, it's like there's this whole other level of expectations and opinions we have to deal with. It can be a lot.
Totally. It is like we're constantly navigating this minefield. You're right. It's like there's this pressure to be perfect in like every single role we play.
Yeah, from how we look to how we lead at work and all of that.
Absolutely. And that's what we're diving deep into today, this fear that holds so many of us back.
Yes.
We're going to explore where it comes from and most importantly, how to actually break free from it.
Yes.
Unapologetically ourselves.
Okay, love that. So first things first, why is this fear so strong, especially for women? Just feels like way more than just wanting to be liked, you know?
It is. It goes way beyond just wanting to be liked. Think back to how girls are often raised to be polite and accommodating and not to be too loud, all that stuff we learn early on.
And that can make us kind of hesitant to truly express ourselves, especially if it means risking disapproval.
Totally. It's almost like we learn that our worth depends on making other people happy. Yeah. Exhausting.
It is exhausting. And it can actually manifest as a real phobia. Did you know that? It's called allodoxophobia. It's like the fear of other people's opinions.
Okay.
Like for real. So it's not just us being sensitive. You know what I mean?
That makes me feel better.
Exactly.
It's an actual thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then on top of that, there's this whole perfectionism trap, this idea that you have to be flawless to avoid judgment.
Ugh. Perfectionism, it's the worst. It is a huge contributor. It's like we're on this treadmill.
Yeah.
Constantly afraid of making any mistake because we think it'll prove all those judgments. Right. Yeah.
And social media is like,
oh, don't even get me started.
I know. It's like fuel to the fire.
Because everyone's always showing their best selves.
The highlight reel.
The highlight reel. And it just makes it so much worse to deal with those comparisons and the self-doubt,
Totally. So we've got these societal pressures, these things we've learned growing up, and then just constantly comparing ourselves on social media. No wonder this fear can feel so overwhelming.
It's a lot. And the worst part is, all this fear, it's actually keeping us from really reaching our full potential.
Oh, yeah?
It stops us from being creative and taking risks and really just expressing who we are. But the good news is there are ways to actually break free.
Yes.
So instead of just dwelling on the problem, let's talk about some things you can actually do to overcome this fear, starting with how to tackle those negative thoughts head on.
Okay. Because honestly, sometimes those negative thoughts feel so real. It's like, how do we even begin to challenge them?
Right. You have to think of it like becoming like a thought detective, So when that voice in your head starts saying something like, oh, everyone's going to think you're a total failure if this project doesn't work out, you got to put on your detective hat.
I love that.
And ask yourself, is that actually true?
Right.
Or am I just catastrophizing here? More often than not, we're actually holding ourselves to these crazy standards that we wouldn't even think of applying to other people.
Right. We are so much harder on ourselves than we would ever be on anyone else.
Exactly. And that's where reframing comes in. So instead of just letting those negative thoughts, just sit there and fester, you have to actively replace them with positive affirmations.
Okay.
Remind yourself of your successes that you're good at, the times you've proven those doubts wrong,
So it's like we're consciously trying to rewrite the script
Exactly.
that's playing in our heads.
Yep.
Instead of, I can't do this, it's like, I've got this.
I've got this. Yes. And along with those affirmations, focusing on your core values can be super grounding, because when you're living in alignment with who you really are, other people's opinions, especially the ones that clash with your values, they just don't matter as much.
It's like having this internal compass that's always guiding you, no matter what kind of noise is happening around you.
Exactly.
That's a great image. But what about when those, negative thoughts are tied to our, deepest fears? What if we're afraid of being judged for what we actually believe in?
That's such an important point. When it comes to our core values, we have to remember that our worth isn't tied to everyone agreeing with us, right?
Right.
Having a strong sense of self allows you to stand firm in your beliefs even when you're faced with people who don't agree with you.
Yeah. It makes me think of that Maya Angelou quote. She said, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated."
Ooh, I like that.
It may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are.
Beautifully said.
And I think that really applies here. We're going to face those challenges to our beliefs.
Right.
But it's how we respond to them that shows who we are.
Exactly. And throughout all of this, remember to be kind to yourself. It's okay to mess up.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be perfect. Embracing self-compassion is really like building a protective shield against all that external criticism.
I think that self-compassion piece is so important, especially in a world that can feel so judgmental.
Absolutely. So we've talked about challenging those negative thoughts, staying connected to what we truly value, and embracing self-compassion.
Yes.
But what about just ignoring the judgment altogether? Is that even possible?
Yeah, because let's be real, sometimes that feels like the only way to survive.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
And you know what? It actually is possible, and it can be so incredibly freeing. It's like building a muscle.
Okay.
The more you practice it, the stronger you get. And one of the best ways to start is by paying attention to your surroundings. Are there certain people or places that just always bring you down? And if so, it's totally okay to set some boundaries, or just distance yourself from those situations. You deserve to be surrounded by people who lift you up and support you, not drain your energy.
Yes. Protecting your energy is so important. It's not selfish.
It's not.
It's like self-preservation.
It is self-preservation, yes.
So besides being mindful of who we surround ourselves with, what are some other ways we can build that,
Yes.
ignore muscle?
Okay, so redirect your focus.
Ah.
Okay, so instead of obsessing over what other people might be thinking, take all that energy and channel it into something that you're passionate about, right? Whether it's learning a new skill or finally working on that project you've been putting off.
Yeah.
The more you invest in your own growth and your own passions, the less power those judgments from other people will have over you.
Love that. It's like shifting our attention from the peanut gallery to center stage where we belong.
Yes, exactly. And you know what else can be surprisingly powerful? Visualization.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
Okay, so picture a shield around yourself, deflecting negative opinions. Can actually help create this sense of mental protection.
I'm all about it.
Yeah.
I'm picturing my force field right now.
Right.
So we've been talking a lot about dealing with judgment from other people. But what about when we are the ones being judgmental? It's so easy to get caught up in judging other people without even realizing it.
You're so right. And that is a really important shift in perspective.
Okay.
So now we're going to kind of dive into why we judge other people and what we can do to become less judgmental ourselves. It's all about self-awareness and understanding that a lot of times when we're judging others, it's actually coming from our own insecurities.
Wow. So instead of judging others, we should be examining ourselves.
Exactly.
That's a powerful realization.
It is.
We were starting to get real about how our own insecurities can fuel those judgmental tendencies we see in ourselves.
Yeah.
How do we start to unravel that?
It all starts with awareness. And mindfulness is like such a powerful tool for that.
Okay.
It's about just observing your thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
without judging them, just noticing them as they come up.
So it's almost like we're hitting the pause button on those automatic reactions, those knee-jerk judgments
Yeah.
that pop into our heads before we even realize it.
Exactly. Instead of just letting those judgmental thoughts, run wild, mindfulness gives us a chance to choose a different response.
Okay.
It's about recognizing, like, hey, I'm having a judgmental thought right now, and then deciding if you want to, feed that thought or just let it go.
Catching ourselves in the act, that's a great first step. But what comes after that?
Yeah.
How do we actually shift our mindset from being judgmental to something, well, more compassionate?
That's where empathy comes in.
Okay.
It's that ability to step outside of your own perspective and actually try to see things from someone else's point of view.
I think that's where I struggle sometimes, especially if I disagree with someone's choices or actions. Really hard to put myself in their shoes.
It definitely takes effort, but it's so worth it. So instead of jumping to conclusions or making assumptions, ask yourself, what might this person be going through?
Right.
What experiences have shaped their perspective?
Yeah.
Maybe they're, acting out of fear or insecurity or past trauma. We rarely have the full picture.
Right. It's like remembering that we're all just doing our best with what we've got.
Exactly.
To navigate life.
You got it. And sometimes those judgmental thoughts, they come from our own triggers.
Okay.
Those tender spots that kind of poke at our insecurities.
It's not just about understanding the other person.
Right.
It's also about understanding ourselves.
Exactly. Taking the time to reflect on what makes you feel judgmental, that can be so insightful. It's about asking yourself, okay, what are my insecurities? What are my triggers? And how can I start to address those underlying issues?
Yeah.
And it's not about blaming yourself, but about recognizing those patterns so you can actually choose to do something different.
It's like doing some deep inner work to heal those wounds so they don't keep projecting outwards as judgment on other people.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful antidotes to judgment is actually gratitude.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah. When we focus on what we're grateful for, it shifts our whole perspective,
Yeah.
From lack to abundance, from negativity to appreciation.
It's like choosing to see the good.
Yes.
Instead of focusing on what we're missing.
Exactly.
And I feel like that shift in focus can really impact how we interact with the world around us.
Absolutely. Cultivating gratitude can help us become more accepting of ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Which naturally makes us less judgmental.
So we've talked about some really powerful strategies for, dealing with judgment from other people.
Yes.
And for becoming less judgmental ourselves.
Uh-huh.
But what about that unapologetically you part?
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually move from that self-awareness and acceptance to living authentically?
Okay, that's the exciting part. It all starts with really figuring out who your authentic self is. What are your values? What makes you happy? What makes you unique?
It sounds like we need to do some serious soul searching.
You do.
Which can be kind of scary.
It can be, but it is so empowering to connect with that true self.
Yeah.
Beneath all those layers of expectations and what society tells us we should be, it's about uncovering the real you, the you that maybe got lost along the way trying to please everybody else.
Yeah, I feel like I've been there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we've done that inner work. We've connected with our authentic selves. Now what?
Right.
How do we actually start living that out loud?
Yeah.
Especially if that fear of judgment is still lingering in the back of our minds.
Okay, so you don't have to make a big announcement or change everything about yourself overnight.
Okay.
It's about taking small steps.
Okay.
One authentic choice at a time.
So it's like we're dipping our toes into the water
Exactly.
of authenticity before we do a full cannonball.
Yes. So maybe it's, speaking up more in a meeting at work or finally wearing that outfit that really expresses your style.
Yeah.
Or saying no to something you don't actually want to do. These small acts of courage, they really build your confidence.
Yeah.
And they pave the way for bigger, bolder moves.
I love that. It's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about making progress.
Exactly. What other advice do you have for someone who is ready to start embracing their authentic self? Remember, you don't have to do this alone, okay? As you start expressing your true self, you're actually going to start attracting people who resonate with your authenticity, people who love your uniqueness.
It's like they say, your vibe attracts your tribe.
Exactly. Having that supportive network, it makes such a difference.
It does.
It's your cheer squad, your safe space to experiment, and your source of strength when those judgmental voices start to get loud again.
Okay, so speaking of those judgmental voices, let's talk about what happens when we do encounter judgment, even when we're really trying to be authentic.
Right.
Because we can work on being less judgmental ourselves.
Yeah.
But we can't control how other people see us. So how do we respond to that in a way that protects our peace and our progress?
Okay, so it's about setting boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and remembering that you don't have to engage with every opinion that comes your way.
Right.
You get to choose what you let into your energy field.
So sometimes the healthiest option is just to walk away.
Sometimes it is.
Okay.
Absolutely. If someone is being disrespectful or hurtful,
Mm-hmm.
you got to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
Let them know that you don't appreciate their judgment and you're not interested in engaging with that negativity.
That feels so powerful. Like we have the power to decide
Yeah.
what we allow into our space. You do, and what we don't.
You do.
And it's not letting someone else's opinion define us.
Exactly. And remember, prioritizing your inner peace is so important.
Yeah.
You can't control what other people think or say, but you can control how you react.
Right.
So choose to let go of their judgment. Focus on taking care of yourself.
Like they say, what other people think of me is none of my business.
Perfectly put. And, if you're finding it really hard to manage that fear of judgment, remember that therapy can be such a valuable resource.
Right. Earlier, we talked about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Yeah.
Can you remind us how that can be helpful for people who are really struggling with this?
Yeah. So CBT is really effective for dealing with things like social anxiety and fear of judgment because it helps you identify and challenge those negative thought patterns that are holding you back. It's like you're basically retraining your brain to think more positively and realistically.
So we're giving that inner critic a makeover.
Exactly. And another technique that can be really helpful is exposure therapy,
Right.
which involves gradually exposing yourself to situations that trigger your fear of judgment,
Okay.
but in a safe and controlled environment with the support of a therapist.
So it's like facing our fears, but with like training wheels on?
Exactly. It helps you build confidence and resilience over time, proving to yourself that you can actually handle those situations and that the judgment you're so afraid of, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to acknowledge that this whole journey, like facing our fears, embracing our authenticity,
Right.
it's not going to happen overnight, right? It takes time and effort.
You're absolutely right. Healing and growth take time. Be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Celebrate your progress.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
So true. This has been such a rich and insightful conversation.
Yeah.
We've explored so much, from understanding where this judgment comes from to actual strategies, becoming more authentic and less judgmental. Is there anything else we should touch on before we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
I think we've covered the key points.
Right.
But, it's important to remember that becoming unapologetically you, it's not like a destination.
Right.
It's a journey.
I love that.
You know?
It's not about reaching some perfect state of self-acceptance.
It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the process of growing and evolving.
Exactly. It's about continuing to learn and challenge ourselves and step outside our comfort zones, even when those judgmental voices are trying to hold us back.
Exactly. So before we move on to the last part of our deep dive, I'd love to leave our listeners with a question to think about.
Okay, I love that.
How can you start putting all of this into action?
Ooh, that's a great question. What's one tangible step our listeners can take today to move towards living more authentically?
That's what we'll be talking about next. We'll discuss some specific things you can start doing right now to embrace your authentic self.
For the final part of our deep dive into becoming unapologetically you. And before we wrap up, I'm really curious about that, that one tangible step you mentioned that our listeners can take today to start living more authentically. What is it?
It really is all about taking action, even if it's just like a small step, So my challenge to you is to pick one thing that feels authentically why you, and just go for it. Don't overthink it. Don't worry about what anyone else might think. Just do it.
I love that. It's like putting all this amazing insight into practice. Can you give us some examples? Like, what could those small acts of authenticity actually look like?
Okay, so think about it this way. Maybe you've been holding back from sharing your creative work, like maybe you write poetry or paint or make music.
Yeah.
So today, post that poem, that painting, that song, even if it's just for a few friends. Or maybe there's a hobby you've been wanting to try, something that feels a little outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So sign up for that class, buy that instrument, just take that first step.
Yeah, it's about like silencing that inner critic.
Exactly.
And letting your true self shine through.
Yes. What other small steps can we take to start living more authentically?
Yeah.
Think about like your everyday interactions, Maybe there's a conversation you've been avoiding because you're afraid of conflict.
Oh, yes.
So today, have that conversation, speak your truth, but do it with kindness and respect.
Yeah.
Even if it feels uncomfortable. Or maybe you've been saying yes to things you don't really want to do just to please other people. So today, practice saying no. Reclaim your time and energy.
Yes, these are such great examples of, how we can actually start making choices that align with who we really are.
Yeah.
It's not about becoming someone different. It's about peeling back the layers, reveal who we already are.
Exactly. And remember, as you start taking these steps, you're probably going to encounter some judgment along the way.
Right. That's inevitable.
It is.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how to handle judgment from other people.
But what about when that judgment is coming from inside?
Okay.
What if we are our own harshest critic?
Oh, that's so real.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that inner voice can be louder than any external judgment.
It can.
So how do we deal with that?
Yeah. How do we quiet that inner critic?
Self-compassion is key. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a close friend.
Okay.
Acknowledge your struggles, validate your feelings, and just remind yourself that you are worthy of love and acceptance, even when you mess up.
It's like being our own best friend instead of our own worst enemy.
Yes.
That's a powerful shift.
It is. And remember, this journey of becoming unapologetically you, it's a process, not a destination.
I love that.
There will be ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
Moments of confidence, moments of doubt.
For sure.
The key is to just keep moving forward, keep learning, keep growing. This whole deep dive has been so insightful. We've explored the complexities of judgment from all these different angles, from understanding where it comes from to developing strategies for handling it with grace and resilience.
Yeah.
Any final words of encouragement for our listeners before we sign off?
Just remember that you're not alone on this journey. We all struggle with fear of judgment, with self-doubt, with the pressure to fit in. But you have the power to choose authenticity, to embrace what makes you unique, to let your light shine.
Love it.
Never let anyone dim your sparkle.
Beautifully said. And, if you're feeling inspired by this conversation, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your experiences, your tips for overcoming this fear of judgment.
Yes.
Let's build a supportive community. We can all, learn and grow together. And if there are other deep dives you'd like us to explore, definitely let us know.
Yes, please.
We are always looking for new topics to unpack. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more empowering conversations like this one. Until next time, keep shining bright.